Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Monday, June 9th. I'm starting this video a little bit earlier. I'll complete it tomorrow on Tuesday. So, somebody sent me this clip you're about to see of this young woman and her interaction with the ChatGPT and the Big Beautiful Bill. And I wanted to start off by saying this, right? So, people who are what I would consider, the bare minimum of a truther, like the bare minimum definition of a truther in terms of American politics and the system. There is this belief that people with money and power, a shadow government, is there because they run the government from the shadows, right? You could say it's all these right-wing rich people or left-wing rich people like Soros, these things. But there's these groups of people that have billions or trillions of dollars, corporations, old money, powerful groups, religious influence, right? The various powerful religions. And they have these power brokers that are more responsible for the governmental policies and the social movements, technological movements, all these things that affect everyday Americans. And that voting does very little, right? That people are, politicians are bought and sold. They have these lobbying groups, right? That buy politicians, foreign lobby groups that buy access to politicians in America. The Israeli lobby, the Chinese lobby, they have these number of lobbyists that have lots of money. These countries that dump a lot of money into the candidates' pockets and things. And so everyone kind of gets a sense of that. I think probably 80% of the population would agree with that on some level. That, that money and power buy influence politically, right? And if you agree with that, and people on the right wing more than most people, the people who believe in the deep state, the right wing has believed in this more than most people, right? That there's influence that is within the government and outside the government of money and power, right? There was a study done, and it was a stupid study. I mean, it's good that somebody did it, but nobody needs a study to believe this, that whatever side the money was on, when there's a particular bill, a particular political issue, won. The money wins 100% of the time. The more money that's dumped into a particular bill or whatever it is going to win. And the money isn't coming from you. It's coming from people who have it, like billions and trillions of dollars of capital money that they can throw at any sort of a situation. And that also, to go along with this, that there's a different set of rules with people with money and power. That people with privilege have better lawyers, better everything, and they can usually buy their way out of trouble. And if they do get into trouble, they go to a different kind of prison. Jeffrey Epstein was able to go to this day prison, house arrest. I mean, these cushy federal penitentiaries where they had tennis courts and shit like that, complete different level of punishment, right? That people with money and power have a different set of rules, and we've known that forever with the British royal family and the people, the lords and the aristocracy in all these countries that had kings and these things, that they have a different set of rules. Most people would agree with that as well, right? And Trump, has recently, in my last video, not recently, he talked about how he protected Hillary even though he promised to lock her up because he didn't want to see the former wife of a president go to jail, and he was pissed that they didn't afford him the same kind of privilege, even though he didn't end up going to jail, but they went after him legally, in a fake way, right? So if you understand all that, and I'm speaking specifically to Trumpers, I've been calling them dumb fucks that, for this obvious reason here. If you understand all that and there's also a plan, as you go into deeper levels of the truth community, that the shadow government has a plan. They have long-standing plans that they've worked out in how to enslave and control the people and keep them from uprising, these things, right? The biggest concern of any king, of any ruling class, as was demonstrated in that movie The Bug's Life, which I'd show you that clip, but you've probably seen it, where Kevin Spacey's grasshopper character dumps a bunch of grain on other grasshoppers, killing them, saying, he first throws one bit of grain and says, "Does that hurt?" And the guy bounces off the guy's head, and he's like, "No, that doesn't hurt." He throws another piece of grain at his head. He goes, "Does that hurt?" And he goes, "No, that doesn't hurt." He goes, "What about this?" And he opens the flue or the whatever holding the grain back, and it comes spilling out, killing the guys. And because they were talking about, like, some ant stood up to them, and they were like, "What's the big deal going back?" And he said, and then he says, "The ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And so if we don't go stomp on their throats, they think that one ant can stand up to them. The next thing you know, they all start thinking that." And so there was that, right? Like that idea that these people, their one fear is the mob, that people just going apeshit and coming after them. And so if you understand all those principles, especially the one about how the people who run the shadow government have a plan, and they've announced that plan, and that plan involves America no longer using a lion's share of the resources, that America has to be taken down, and all the things that Americans are resisting, giving up their guns, all these other ways that Americans are resisting these things, has to be taken care of, right? That's an ongoing narrative that's been around. My brother was one of the sort of original truthers that where there's a very fringe group of people back in the 70s, when he came back from Vietnam. And he had his own radio show, and he interviewed these guys, Eustace Mullins and some of these old-time, writers and truthers. This has been around for a while. All the way back to the 1930s when this book called Propaganda was about how mind control could be used through the TV, and which is, of course, has happened. So if you understand that level of control, I call these people the controllers, you call them the elite, but if you understand that level of control and you're a Trumper, then what are they getting out of letting Donald Trump be president? First, you'd have to say they let him be president. The only thing that goes against this is everybody's indoctrination that you see movies like Star Wars and, any number of these movies where there's rebels. There's a small rebel alliance going against an evil empire, and somehow the rebels win. In reality, that never fucking happens. The best you can do is have a mass rebellion of starving citizens that behead the kings and queens, and, the country goes back to being ruled by powerful people, the rich people, because the masses can go apeshit, but they can't really rule. They don't have the capacity to rule. And then you get stuff like what's happened in communist China and communist Russia, which is supposed to be a rule by the people. It's supposed to be anti-royal family. And what is it? It's not a democracy. It's horrible places to live, right? And so the communism is not a solution. So the people never win. The rebellions never work. We haven't had a successful one in 5,000 years, where the country is now run by, maybe some place like Bhutan, which is supposed to be, the gross national product is happiness or some shit like that. Maybe there's some small country that, I don't know about, but, all the major countries, rebellions have never worked. It's just the same old, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, right? So if you understand these basic principles that you've been lied to by the movies, that the underdog could somehow win, and that Trump somehow could slide through, and with the power of the people behind him, could come in and fix things. Like, it's just fucking stupid. It's silly. If you believe in all these other things, then you know that can't happen. There's not some person who can fix things. And if a good person did get elected, they destroy the person, because everybody else is corrupt. There's gatekeepers at every post. Even to the extent that Trump and Elon had, kind of a mandate, and, to whatever sincerity they went after government waste, they couldn't really do anything. The people are looting trillions of dollars of American taxpayer money, and nobody can stand up to these powerful people because they have trillions of dollars to, bribe people and, defend themselves and the rest of it. And Trump didn't stand up to the vaccine makers and the big pharma when COVID hit. In fact, he got paid $1 million by Pfizer. And so Trump is completely compromisable. He's a greedy piece of shit. He's completely corrupt. He will accept a $400 million jet. Everyone knows that he does shit like that, right? And so he's that guy, right? Trump is that fucking guy. He's not the guy that people think he is. And so if you throw out the stupid rebellion, rebels can be successful narratives that you've seen in movies, that there's no chance of this thing ever being turned around. So why would they put Trump in? Well, they put Trump in because he's going to help them execute their goals, that he's going to help move the plan forward. That's the only explanation that makes any sense whatsoever. That Trump is their asset, their tool. That's the only reason. I said this, I'm going to get into Doris Burke, but how many times have I called things correctly? And it doesn't take a fucking genius to do this. And you don't have to be professorial. You don't have to be a prophet. The spiritual stuff helps for my particular case, but you can just see the way that they're planning things. They're announcing their plan, and then they execute their plan, and you're like, oh, why didn't I see that? Well, they told you what they were going to fucking do. Like they always tell you what they're going to do, right? But what did I say when they were going after Trump legally, in terms of lawsuits and criminal prosecution? And I say, when I see Trump in prison or dead, you can come talk to me about it. But up until that point, he is an asset. The mainstream media, all the liberal media, revolves around Trump. I mean, they didn't talk about, they talked about Trump 90% of the time and Biden 10% over the whole Biden presidency. Trump was in the news way more than Biden was. And the Democratic Party had centralized their whole agenda around, hey, at least we're not Trump. And so you have these two entities, right, who, and then the government, everything revolved around Trump. We've revolved around Trump for the past 10 years. He's obviously their asset. And so if he's their asset, what are they going to do with him? Why would they give him a second term? If all the other things I said, which most of us believe are true, then they gave this guy, the people that run the system, gave this guy a second term. And it isn't because they want to make America great again. And so Trump is doing some sort of destructive work for them, whatever it is. So let's look into it here. One of my friends on Instagram, whatever they call it, the people on Instagram, sent me this, and I found it on Facebook and TikTok, but it wouldn't let me open because I don't have a TikTok account. That's the whole thing.
I uploaded all 816 pages of the Big Beautiful Bill Act into ChatGPT, and I said, what are your thoughts on this bill altogether? Really give it to me. Don't hold anything back. And here's what ChatGPT told me.
Okay, so why would you have to say don't hold anything back? Really give it to you? Like, what does that even mean? Like, does that affect, if you say really give it to me to ChatGPT, then they'll give you a different level of, I mean, what are you talking about? Like, it's just supposed to give you what, you're saying that, and I guess this is part of it, that ChatGPT tries to cater its answer to the person. They kind of try to figure out what kind of a profile, because they want to keep you there. And I talked about that. And, these AI bots, they all want to keep you there, right? So there's that. But, really give it to me. Don't hold back. Because usually...
This bill, H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, is not just aggressive in scope, it's a direct and deeply strategic attack on the democratic architecture of the United States. It masquerades as administrative efficiency and fiscal responsibility, but underneath it's a comprehensive blueprint for executive consolidation, ideological control, and systemic disenfranchisement. Here's the blunt truth.
The blunt truth. Okay, it's authoritarianism. I just want to say before we get to the blunt truth, I believe this to be, fairly accurate. But ChatGPT is certainly, like all these search engines, is swayed towards a more liberal point of view. And, nothing that ChatGPT is going to stop the bill from being passed. Because right now it's a couple of Republican senators that are between the bill passing or not. And it's in negotiation, right? Elon Musk has deleted some of his tweets. I'll get into that. More than likely, I saw that while I was eating lunch. And that'll probably be coming up today here too. But it's going to probably pass, right? This bill is going to probably pass. And so, ChatGPT saying these things, whatever its motivation or its programming, it's probably, regardless of its bias, it's fairly accurate, right? This is not going to affect the outcome at all.
It's authoritarianism wrapped in bureaucratic language. H.R. 1 is what happens when an entire governing philosophy is based on dismantling government unless it serves the powerful. Every single chapter of this bill either centralizes executive authority, defunds regulatory agencies, strips away civil protections, or shifts the burden of governance onto the most vulnerable people in society.
Okay, so, the Republicans have long been infiltrated with this stupid idea to tear down dysfunctional agencies, that big government is bad. And they have been told this. Some of them are rich people like Trump who want to, Trump's always talking about getting rid of environmental protection, which is one of the biggest. This is probably my drop dead thing because I know this country's fucked. I know the governments and the civilization is fucked. Like it's a bad system. It's going to collapse. But what you do to the environment, people are going to have to live here after we fuck this place and fuck this thing up, and God knows what kind of environmental dystopian world we're going to leave behind to our future versions of ourselves and future lives and all this other stuff, right? But in all that, there is like just don't fuck with the environment. Like don't take everything else down with us. And Trump is wanting to do that because he's a real selfish prick. We have enough development. It's just, there's going to be depopulation at some point. We have enough places to live. We don't have to fuck up other sanctuaries and environments. And, the Republicans want to get rid of all this stuff. And as dysfunctional as the government is, there are things in the government that protect you. This is back to the Cubies when they wanted to strip away, give up their Miranda rights. These were so-called patriots who were so freaked out by Pizzagate and these other things, and most of these things had been embellished and they were given disinformation. And they were so desperate that they were calling for rendering people like Tom Hanks without any evidence, substantial criminal evidence without a criminal investigation, dragging them to Guantanamo Bay and giving them secret military tribunals and executing them. And this was what these Cubies were asking for. And so now with Trump, they're going to hand them this thing. And he's going to do it. Like he's going to fucking do it, and it's going to be bad. Like it's not just going to be this bill. There's going to be martial law. It's going to be all these things. And he's saying it's to get rid of immigrants or whatever his excuse is. But ultimately, even if he was great and he isn't, he's a horrible fucking piece of shit person. What about the next Democratic president without your rights protecting you? And this is the ChatGPT is talking about.
Expedited deportations without judicial review, that's not about efficiency. That's about eliminating constitutional oversight to build a machine that can operate in darkness. Cutting independent agencies like MedPAC or the Social Security Advisory Board, that's not reform. It's removing the brakes from a runaway train. Silencing classrooms and ending DEI funding, it's a cultural purge designed to codify a narrow, exclusionary worldview into national education policy. This isn't conservative governance, it's counter-democratic engineering. It systemically dismantles the safeguards of a free society. The institutions targeted by H.R. 1 aren't arbitrary. They're specifically the ones that ensure transparency, protect minorities, and maintain balance. Consumer protections? Gone. IRS ability to audit tax sheets? Neutered. Public health investments? Slashed. Environmental and emission standards? Repealed wholesale. This bill defunds every agency that stands between corporate interests and profit. It creates loopholes wide enough to drive oligarchy through. It paves the road for a soft coup. What's most dangerous is how legally sophisticated this document is. It's not sloppy. It's not amateur. It's meticulous. It builds the legal scaffolding for one-party control.
Okay, let's say she didn't even ask ChatGPT this. And, she's really smarter than she appears. She's able to write, because it's a well-written document, whatever it is, it's post that she's reading here. Or ChatGPT is biased. All this stuff sounds exactly like the New World Order shit that, and this was something Alex Jones I wonder what he has to say about the big, beautiful bill. Because, he's a shill for this stuff, right? But all those people, those Republican right-wing truthers that are so-called patriots and have been worried about. This is what I talked about with Obama. When Obama was president, all the liberals, all the agencies that were out there that were about human rights, remember they gave Obama Peace Prize, a Nobel Peace Prize, as soon as he was elected, another one when he left. He was the hardest president ever on whistleblowers. He was droning kids, and he was behaving in a way that the liberals never thought he would. And he was racist, and he was anti-Muslim, even though he talked like a Muslim, and the right wing believed that he said he was a Muslim. He did horrible things, and the left wing didn't even notice because they just thought, oh, we got a guy in there, a person of color, he'll do the right thing. And he was actually like a really bad Republican. And because there was no one guarding, it was like he was scoring on his own team's hoop. And no one's like, what are you, they were like, what are you doing, right? Why are you doing that? And they're not going to play defense on him because he's on their team, but he's scoring points for the other side. And that's the same thing with Trump, right? All the Trumpers think that he's getting rid of the liberal stuff and the New World Order stuff, but he's pushing it through, right? And so, regardless of this post, it's whatever it is, it sounds fairly accurate to what the people want that control Trump and what Trump himself is his work is for them to accomplish.
It shifts power away from oversight bodies and into the hands of agencies under direct presidential control. It establishes surveillance and enforcement norms that can easily be turned on dissenters. It dissolves the idea of nonpartisan truth, replacing it with politically approved doctrine, especially in education, health, and environmental science. This isn't policy. It's a hostile restructuring of the republic, not done through tanks or violence, but through legislative subversion.
Okay, so the part of the Elon Musk Trump Twitter feud, or Elon Musk Twitter thing, whatever Trump's thing was, their feud, that was the most telling was when Trump said he's all of a sudden against this big beautiful bill, but he knew the big beautiful bill better than anybody in my administration, any of you. He had access to it before it became public. And Elon Musk said nobody did. They dropped it at midnight and no one got a chance to read it. And Trump didn't read it because Trump doesn't give a shit about this stuff, right? This is what's wonderful about ChatGPT. If it worked, of course, it's going to have bias, but how many people want to read through these documents, right? There was this document put out by all the intelligence community, the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI. And it was about Russian interference in the election. And I've referenced this document, and people would talk about it. No one really read it. And they made it sound like it was some great document. And 2/3 of it were about this Russian, their CIA called GRU, and the Russian Today YouTube channel. And that was most of it. Like, their influence was limited to, superficial shit, right? And I read through the document. It was kind of interesting. But I'm like, I'm not going to do this a lot, right? Because, who wants to read those dry legal documents and bills? And it just sucks. And even if I read it, I only understand some of it because it's in legalese and it's, there are a lot of terms you have to look up. Like, I'm not going to read it as well as somebody else. But that's the advantage of having this ChatGPT. Trump is often bored. He talked about this. He said that guy left the meeting. Remember when Pete Hegseth invited a guy into Signal, the Signal app, and it was a liberal reporter, and Trump said he left because it's so boring. Like, Trump said he goes to those meetings and he's bored out of his mind because it's nothing about him, and like he likes, attention. He likes being around his supporters and stuff. He doesn't like governing. So Trump didn't read this bill. This is not a bill that Trump wrote. This is a bill that the powers that be that are behind Trump are pushing out there, and they're telling all of his people around him, yeah, get this guy to push it through. Trump doesn't know what's in it. Trump has no idea what's in the bill. He knows zero about it. Like, he didn't even look at the first fucking page. All he needs to know is it's called Big Beautiful Bill, and its passing is some kind of thing that he's supposed to do. And they told him it's all about what he likes and things that he put in there, and he didn't put shit in there. He has nothing to do with this bill, right? I'm 100% sure about that.
The human cost will be catastrophic. Let's be crystal clear. People will suffer if this bill passes. Children will go hungry as food assistance is gutted and work requirements are tightened. Trans youth will lose access to care and their families will be criminalized for seeking it. Immigrants, many of them legal residents, will live in fear of removal or retaliation. Workers will face unregulated financial scams, higher pollution, and fewer rights. The elderly and disabled will face a future without independent scrutiny of Medicare or Social Security sustainability. This bill treats social safety nets as disposable and human rights as negotiable. Final verdict: this is the dress rehearsal for autocracy. If this bill becomes law, it will not just change what the government does, it will change what the government is. It is a declaration that only certain people deserve protection, only certain truths can be spoken, and only certain lives are worth investment. This is the type of legislation autocrats dream of. Legal, sweeping, ideologically rigid, and dressed in the language of reform. If you believe in democracy, pluralism, justice, or simply the idea that the government should not be a weapon, H.R. 1 must be buried, not amended, not negotiated, defeated, fully.
Okay. Whatever you want to say about that, that's pretty brutal. Let me ask the Gemini thing about it. See what that has to say. Okay, so this is worst case scenarios from a critical perspective based on the bill's stated goals and typical criticisms of similar policies. Increased national debt and deficit, despite claims of reduction, while proponents claim the bill would reduce the debts and the deficit, might argue its significant tax cuts, promised spending cuts, or economic growth do not materialize as projected. The results could be substantial increase, unrealistic economic growth predictions, exacerbated inequality, criticize of large tax cuts often that disproportionately benefit corporations and wealthier individuals, leading to widened gap between the rich and the poor. Welfare reform provisions lead to significant cuts in social safety nets without adequate replacement programs. The reason they have social safety nets is to keep people from rioting. It's keeping people from breaking into your house because they have no food, right? So they don't give the people enough, but they give them a little bit less than enough, and it keeps them from criminal activity, right? I mean, worsening criminal activity. Cuts to essential services. The bill aims for historic spending cuts. A worst-case scenario would involve these cuts impacting crucial government services, research, education, infrastructure, maintenance. Reducing funding for federal agencies could hamper the ability to perform necessary functions, leading to inefficiencies and breakdown. Economic instability and recession. Proposed tax cuts, spending cuts, challenges leading to immediate fiscal contraction of misallocated resources that could potentially trigger or deepen economic recession. Uncertainty created by sweeping legislation changes also deter investment. Environmental regulations and rollbacks. They're going to get rid of, I'm just going to read the bullet points here. Increased dependence on tariffs, and so that's just some of it. And let me reword the question here. Okay, so let me just read the summary of the last piece. I missed that. It's important to remember that this is a hypothetical worst-case scenario based on stated aims of the bill and common criticisms levied against similar policy approaches. Proponents of the bill would argue it leads to economic prosperity, job creation, and fiscal responsibility. The actual effects would depend on numerous factors, including the final text of the bill, how it's implemented in the broader economic geopolitical context. So I wrote, what would a post-apocalyptic America caused by the policies of the bill look like? Well, it's important to state up front that a post-apocalyptic scenario is extreme and highly speculative exploration of even the most severe criticisms of the proposed policies. We can imagine what a scenario might look like if the worst fears about the One Big Beautiful Bill Act were actualized. Economic ruin and currency collapse. Hyperinflation and worthless currency. If massive cuts lead to uncontrolled explosion of national debt, coupled with loss of international confidence and aggressive money printing, the U.S. dollar might become virtually worthless. People's savings would be wiped out, and the concept of modern economy would cease to exist. Barter and localization of economics of economies without a function national currency. Trade would revert to local bartering systems. Goods would be scarce. Essential terms, food, water, medicine, would be highly prized and difficult to acquire. Failed financial institutions, banks and other financial institutions would collapse, severing access to the digital wealth and credit. Social fragmentation and collapse of the governance, breakdown in law and order, deep cuts to essential services, including law enforcement and emergency services and justice system, combined with widespread economic desperation, would lead to rampant crime, vigilantism, and the dissolution of any central authority. Warlords and local factions, in the absence of federal state governance, local gangs, militias, or charismatic leaders might establish control over small territories, ruling through force. Extreme inequality, the already existing economic divides would become a chasm. A very small, well-resourced elite might retreat to fortified enclaves, with the vast majority would struggle in profound poverty. Environmental catastrophe and resource scarcity, ecological decay. If regular rollbacks led to unchecked pollution and accelerated climate change, the environment would become severely degraded. Air and water quality would plummet, making many areas uninhabitable without specialized equipment. Extreme weather and famine. Of course, they're not talking about World War III, which would be the bigger problem. Obviously, climate change is something most of us don't agree with, but extreme weather and famine, more intense droughts, floods, storms would destroy what's left of the agriculture and infrastructure, leading to widespread famine and displacement. Contaminated water and soil, industrial waste, and lack of environmental protection would contaminate natural resources, making clean drinking water and fertile soil extremely rare and valuable commodities, leading to resource wars. Decimated infrastructure and public health, ruined infrastructure without investment and maintenance due to past budget cuts or economic collapse. Roads, bridges, power grids, and communication networks would crumble. Travel and informative flow would be extremely difficult, isolating communities. Widespread disease, cuts to public health services, lack of sanitation, contaminated water, and malnutrition will lead to outbreak of preventable diseases, dramatically increase mortality rates. Limited health care, hospitals would not be functional or operate only from a very wealthy, leading to simple injuries or treatable illnesses becoming death sentence for most. International isolation and conflict, global pariah, a U.S. that had been defaulted on its debts, collapsed in its currency, and is consumed by internal strife, would lose all international standing and influence. Trade collapse and resource wars, increased protectionism through extreme tariffs would likely lead to global trade collapse and possibly direct international conflicts over dwindling resources. In this extreme hypothetical scenario, the Big Beautiful Bill, by pushing existing vulnerabilities to the breaking point, would not merely cause economic recession, but a fundamental unraveling of the United States as a cohesive nation state, plunging it into a chaotic, primitive, and highly dangerous existence. This speculative thought experiments, not a prediction of likely outcomes. So, holy fuck. That sounds kind of realistic. I mean, take away the climate change things. It's stuff that many truthers are going to believe is going to happen one way or another. And that's kind of the stated goal of the people that run the system, because they can't make good on all these promises. They can't make good on your lifestyle anymore because of the debt-based economic system and everything else crumbling. And so all of those things, right? Okay, so today is Tuesday, I believe the 9th, but who knows? If it isn't the 9th, it's the 10th. It's definitely not the 8th. Unless it is. So, June 9th, did I say May? Anyways, it's definitely not May. And so, I have a bunch of things to get to. And people send me a bunch of kind of in-school things I want to get to. And hopefully I can do that today. There's always big news. And so I want to get to the Greta Thunberg there. It's kind of, Trump has some hilarious reaction to that whole thing. The whole selfie yacht. That's a great, But aside from the left and the stupidity of Greta Thunberg and all these things, Trump is trying to invoke martial law, regardless of what's going on in L.A. I just saw Fetterman post that he's firmly against, he's really into freedom of speech, but he's firmly against what's going on in L.A. with these immigration riots. Now, I don't know if the riots are staged. I'm not really paying much attention. We lost internet yesterday, and, I was doing other things. But I know he wants to bring in martial law. Like, that's part of this whole thing, right? And they want him to bring in martial law. And Trump wanted to do it. If he could have gone back to 2020, he would have brought in martial law after the whole election debacle. And he wanted, all those the bullshit riots they had, right? All that. Remember they had that Chaz place in Portland where the people just took over a section of the city and all that stuff, right? All that liberal bullshit stuff. And so, whatever's going on in L.A. and Gavin Newsom, as Trump calls him, in this battle between them, and him not wanting National Guard and Trump wanting National Guard. And so let's start here. I have one video of this thing. But there's these riots that are going on, and Trump wants to push National Guard on these riots. And if it was an Israeli riot, it'd be even worse, right? Anti-Israel riot.
Deploying federalized troops is a dangerous escalation, but we need to be real about this. This is about another agenda. It's not about public safety. There's clearly no plan, and there is clearly no policy. Hi again, everybody.
So I agree with that statement. I don't know who this mayor is. I assume she's a Democratic mayor from L.A. But it's not about public safety. Trump wants to violate posse comitatus and bring in not just National Guard, but bring in, the National Guard's a little bit different, but bring in actual troops, right? They said it. Like he said he wanted to do that. And he wanted to use the military to get Operation Warp Speed out there. Like he's really wants to bring the military into America. Like there are these sacred things that every politician, whether they believe in them or not, is told you can't go against these things. And people used to know about them. People were better educated, right? In the 50s and 60s and 70s when I grew up, and all the way to probably the 90s. I guess probably when the computer world took over. And people had a better sense of these things being important. I mean, when you didn't have them, and you see the countries that don't have them, your Miranda rights, your rights to due process, habeas corpus stuff, all that stuff that they were, they didn't understand. The Christine Nome couldn't even say what it was, right? All that kind of stuff that has to do with your getting a fair trial, and you just can't be thrown in prison for no reason. And then all the things that go along with that were, anti-monarchy stuff. And, the stuff that has to do with the Constitution and the rest of these things. And Trump doesn't like any of those things because he's coming from a business world where he had the ultimate authority to fire people and make business decisions. And he didn't have to have any checks and balances. Trump doesn't like checks and balances. And he's the exact kind of person that should have them. So Trump, in fact, I think he dislikes higher education. He dislikes intellectuals. What does he do? He shits on universities and then goes to WFC events. WFC? Is that what, the Dana White thing. And, he's going to go to wrestling events. He likes dumb asses. He likes dumb fucks who listen to him, and he wants people who, even if he shoots somebody in the face, will still be behind him. And he has a disdain for things that are a higher nature. He's a low vibrational person. And so he's not going to see the benefit. Like, RFK Jr. could tell him about it, why these things are important. But he's against these things. And he can't wait to violate them. And he's just looking for an excuse. I don't know if these riots are real. They're staged. I don't know much about the riots themselves. But I know that Trump is using them to get rid of your rights. Like he just wants to get rid of citizen rights
It's 5 o'clock in New York. It's 2 o'clock in Los Angeles, where this weekend saw a major escalation of Donald Trump's powers as he responded to protesters taking to the city streets, upset over the administration's ICE raids. Donald Trump deployed hundreds of National Guard troops to Los Angeles to respond to the protests, a move California's Governor Gavin Newsom has sued the Trump administration over. To understand just how truly extreme and extraordinary what Trump did was, let's get into some history and context. The National Guard, a state-based military force, is routinely used to assist in emergency situations. Typically, it is a natural disaster or severe weather event. In January, National Guard troops were used to help fight fires as they blazed through Los Angeles. In 2005, the National Guard helped in the recovery from Hurricane Katrina. But there are also rare times when the Guard is used to restore order. In the year 1992, then President George H.W. Bush deployed troops in response to riots that broke out after Rodney King, the Rodney King riots they're referred to. But he did so, this is important, after California's governor at the time asked him to do so. So what we saw this weekend was neither of those things. It was Trump calling in the National Guard in defiance of California's Governor Gavin Newsom's wishes, marking a huge escalation by the commander-in-chief.
So there's the thing. This is the great thing about the rioters. Look at the rioters here. They're all got selfies out. They all got their cameras out.
Wishes, marking a huge escalation.
I mean, they're camera-based rioters.
The last time an American president did this, the only time an American president has done this without a request coming from a state's governor, was in 1965. President Lyndon B. Johnson brought in the National Guard to protect those marching for civil rights, while Alabama's Governor George Wallace, a well-known segregationist, refused. President Johnson said this at the time, quote, "These forces should be adequate to assure the rights of American citizens to walk peaceably and safely without injury or loss of life from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama." Meanwhile, Governor Newsom this weekend called the deploying of troops by Donald.
So I am firmly against protests. Protests, when done right, if they were done right, would carry a threat with them that people are going to go apeshit and take over the government. Like to scare the shit out of the powers that be, that we've had enough. Like these are, and those, riots, like the verge of riots, and that they know who's responsible, and we're going to go get you. Like that's a check and a balance to like if you push people too far. And, in the past, we're talking about villagers rioting at the, people going after the king and the monarchs, and them realizing, oh shit, we gotta give back a little bit of the shit that we stole, right? Otherwise, they're gonna come fucking kill us. Like that. That's the only thing that these things have any value. In that context, right? And it doesn't have that in. I've talked about this before. I was coming home from work, and I was working with teenage sex offenders in a fucking horrible job that was really stressful. And I had an ex-wife with mental health issues and a survivor who had mental health issues. And 6 kids living in a cockroach-infested apartment. And it was a fucking stressful time in my life. And we just had a newborn, and there were some issues, and I had to come home from work, and I was coming home a little bit early. And I lived in the 5 College area in Amherst, Massachusetts. That's where I started the meditation. I was living in that area. And it's a famous place in Massachusetts where there's 5 colleges. It's very liberal. There's a lot of good things there. Beautiful place. And they were having anti-war protests for UMass. Now, pretty much everybody who lived in Amherst was against the war. And these college kids were walking the streets with signs, and I was delayed from going home. And I had real things I had real stress going on there, right? Coming from a stressful job to whatever. And these kids are smiling and all happy. No war in Iraq. And I'm like, nobody gives a shit about this here. What the fuck you protesting for? It was just like a little fucking college. And I'm really pissed off at the protesters. They're delaying me. But it's something that's fucking silly, right? they had protests all the time, and nobody in that area would, and protests don't work in general. Like, it's just, like, you can post something on the internet. They go, I can make a video about something, and I can say something that's triggers somebody in their bullshit belief system, because most of the time, I'm 100% accurate, and so it hurts their little belief system, and they'll leave a crappy comment, because telling people they're full of shit doesn't work. If it was that easy, because I'm in the change business because of the, working as a counselor and then working as, whatever I do here, and nobody wants to change. Nobody changes. I mean, there are people who change, and they have to be, either people who are desperate, or really have a craving for God. Like, they have to have some inner compulsion. The majority of people do not want to change themselves. They don't want to give anything up. They don't want to better themselves. They don't. And so protests are the worst thing. And the only way that protest works, anything works, is if you have leverage. If you want to force something and people were like, all right, I better give up something, or I'll, we're at the threat of being overrun by these rioters, right? Like, it's just, there has to have leverage. There's no leverage in these bullshit protests in California that aren't going to affect anything. Like, it just hands more power to Trump. He's not going to get rid of ICE. And so, whatever these protests are about, anytime you see people with masks on and they look like anarchists have been used for probably like over 100 years, even longer maybe. These anarchists are a fake group of wealthy elite people that, their college kids would dress up in black and pretend to be anarchists. This group called anarchists. And they actually are, they're part of the ruling class, and they push this stuff, right? Anyways, let's get back to it here. But the protests are they're stupid. They always have the opposite effect of what you're going for. You always lose more instead of gaining more.
Donald Trump, quote, purposefully inflammatory and will only escalate tensions. He said, quote, this is the wrong mission and will erode public trust. Eroding public trust is exactly what the United States military and the men and women who serve in the military is not what they want. It's not what they need. Doesn't make any of us safer. Doesn't make them safe. Officers and all members of the military work extremely hard to keep a stark distinction between themselves and their politics. That's why it's so difficult and rare when they speak out. Men and women of the military swear an oath to the Constitution, not to a specific president. There's even a law in place to stop presidents from using federal troops to enforce domestic policies. It's called the Posse Comitatus Act. But we saw this already during Trump 1.0. If not for people around him, people like Mark Esper, Mark Milley, John Kelly, Jim Mattis, people we may not know about just...
Yeah, see, Trump does not care about Posse Comitatus. He doesn't like anything that... Trump is a rich guy who bumps up against the law all the time. I mean, and he talked about this. He's not fucking shy about it. That whenever he bumped up against the law, usually it was environmental laws, but whatever laws it was, he'd have a team of lawyers trying to find a way to circumvent the law. And so it's the worst kind of person to be president. And he clearly was stating these things. We wanted to be a dictator on day one, these things. Because he said it would be so much easier if he could just tell people what to do. And he just thinks he's, got it. He's just delusional. He's so fucking, this whole idea Trump was always right? Trump was right about everything. Fucking, it's really stupid because he's right 10% of the time, and that's just because he's, broken clock is right twice a day, this kind of thing. He just, he goes along with things that are, existing narratives, and he's not, he's horrible. I mean, you should see all the things that he's doing, and the Trumpers never will, which is hilarious. I don't even know if he needs the Trumpers anymore, so it doesn't really matter. It's just trying to wake up a Trumper was what difference does it make? I don't think Trump gives a shit about. I mean, he likes adulation. He likes, he likes the people, but they're all going to turn on him. Think about every way Trump's relationships end. The Trumpers will feel betrayed, and Trump will be like, these people, well, you guys were not, he'll turn on him. It already happened on January 6th. Trump fucked those people over by falling for whatever he fell for and sent them up to Capitol Hill, and then the whole thing escalated, and they got fucking worked by the intelligence community. So, but Trump's, the main thing here is it's going to be a power grab. And this is what my, interaction with the Gemini thing, where it said, when I said, give me a apocalyptic scenario from this bill, if it isn't the bill, it'll be something else. Trump's job is to run the country into the ground. I mean, it's already run into the ground, but make everybody acknowledge it, right? Like, the lifestyle of Americans are going to come down. They need a scapegoat, which is Trump. They need a patsy, which is Trump, and then all the people around him, and the Trumpers, and, to some extent, the truth community. They'll all be patsies, so they can institute, like, it'll be all the stuff Trump's doing, but with, like, forced, like the whole RFK Jr. thing. It'll be forced vaccines, forced, medical stuff. It'll be, like, all the things, right? Like, all the things that were, that were the bad stuff of the liberals with Trump-level martial law stuff, right? I mean, this is where it's all headed.
Yet, if not for those men saying no, Donald Trump likely would have used the military against American citizens the first time. According to a book written by now New York Times reporter Michael Bender, quote, Trump wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807 and deploy active duty troops to Washington, D.C. amid protests following the murder of George Floyd last May. But then Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, reportedly pushed back, arguing that there were legal constraints on the military interfering in domestic matters. Quote, I said, you're in effing charge, Trump reportedly yelled at Milley, who shouted back, quote, well, I'm not in charge. God damn it, Milley said to others in the room, which included former Attorney General William Barr and former Defense Secretary Mark Esper. Quote, there's a room full of lawyers here. Will someone inform him of my legal responsibilities, end quote. That's where we start the hour with some of our favorite experts and friends. Retired National Guard Major General and member of the National Security Leaders for America, Randy Manner, is here with me at the table for the hour. Chief political columnist, host of the InPolitic podcast for Puck, MSNBC national affairs analyst.
We got the Puck guy.
John Heilman's here, and Princeton University professor, MSNBC political analyst, Eddie Glaud's here. Let's start in history in case events intervene, as they often do while we're on the air. What does this moment feel like?
I've been trying to find the language, to be honest with you. It feels as if Trump's ambition is now in full view, that the scene has been set. The barbarians are rattling at the gates. The feckless Democrats refuse to defend the country. And the warriors will now sweep in. And the question is, will we play our parts? So it feels as if the ugly underbelly of the country, right, is in full view in some ways, yeah.
It feels predictable.
Let's go to the general guy here. And then I want to move on, but here.
Military.
I think there's two important things that we've got to remember. Doesn't matter whether you are on the left, on the right, or the center. There's two key issues at stake here. One is the freedom of speech, which is being impeded and it's being stomped on right now. And everyone across the country, no matter what your party, has to understand that. The second one is...
which Trump wants to get rid of. Trump wants, Biden was really pushing to deplatform people, and Trump whined like a little bitch when he was deplatformed. And he didn't have, Twitter, and he couldn't do his thing. Which, I said months before that happened, Trump should have done something like Truth Social. I was talking about that before Truth Social existed. He should have done it before the election because he had the money to do it. I'm like, why not have your own platform in case they kick you off? And they're kicking off other people. And, of course, I couldn't imagine what would happen there, that Fox News would turn on him during the election and fuck him when, he forgave them now, but that's what happened. And the rest of the things that happened afterwards, right? And then Trump began to platform at a time where, they were just rolling over him. Like the stuff that was happening to him, he said, what kind of way is this to run a country? But instead of realizing the value of these things, freedom of speech and all these other things, Trump is, wanting to get power and then do the same thing, but even on a more severe level. And then hand this whole thing back over to the Democrats with a broken America without constitutional rights. And so, like, this is, it's worst case scenario. Trump doing all the damage he can, then handing it back to the Democrats to run their fucking shitty agenda that, is on hold for now, but they'll be back as soon as they come back. The gender stuff and all these other things, right? And they'll push it because they'll be able to have the power to do it, because there won't be any kind of checks and balances in place anymore.
It's kind of interesting why this particular federal government is actually stomping all over states' rights whenever they espouse that local authorities should have the ability to take care of their citizens as they see best. So I think those are the two big takeaways for every single American, let alone the implications for our readiness and for the young men and women who are literally going to be side by side across a picket line, should we say, from their neighbors that they know, that perhaps they even came from those very areas. So this is a very, very dangerous and contentious situation. It is totally an inappropriate use of the National Guard, particularly where the governor asked for no help. That's something that just, from my position as the acting vice chief of the National Guard Bureau under President Obama, we would never have imagined ever doing this in this situation to impede free speech.
All right, so, it's whatever. This is happening. This is going to happen, and there's nothing to stop it, right? A similar thing, a stupid protest, because I'll protest again. I mean, you should basically understand right now that if you protest, that, some things are protected on college campuses or whatever. But protests on college campuses, are stupid, right? It's dumb college kids, dumb fuck college kids who are protesting a place where everyone kind of agrees with them. And it doesn't really, the administration of college campus can't do anything, right? Unless you're protesting against something at the college, it's, it's silly. And it has no bearing on you protesting at Columbia University or Harvard is not going to stop fucking Israel doing what it's doing. And Israel still has the majority support of Americans. And certainly the president, that's all they need. And they have all the Congress. They bought and paid for, right? So they have to sign a support Israel, piece of paper. This was fleshed out by Cynthia McKinney, who said she lost her seat when she wouldn't sign a piece of paper supporting Israel. It's a pledge. You've got to make a pledge, and if you don't, they go after your seat because they have the ability to lobby. And so none of these things have any real bearing or meaning. But they're, we're in full-out fuck you mode. Trump is in full-out fuck you mode, and so is Israel. Fuck you, we don't care what you guys think, and, even the whatever. And so they're just going for it. Israel's going for Palestine, and Trump is going for dictatorship.
Yeah.
Mr. President,
Go ahead,
do you have a message for Greta Thunberg, and did she come up on your call with the Prime Minister today?
Well, she's a strange person. She's a young, angry person. I don't know if it's real anger. It's hard to believe, actually, but I saw what happened. She's certainly different. Anger management. I think she has to go to an anger management class.
Do you
That's
think
my primary recommendation for her.
Was she kidnapped by Israel, as she says? Was she kidnapped?
I find it. I think Israel has enough problems without kidnapping Greta Thunberg.
Boom. So that was his response. And then there was Fox News here.
See in a few moments here the IDF intercepting the so-called selfie yacht. It was bound for Gaza and now transporting it to Israel. The activist Greta Thunberg.
The selfie yacht is a fucking wonderful name. I mean, having selfie and yacht together, for this pretentious fake fucking.
And the others on board will be shown footage of the terror attacks from October 7th. Trey Ying's live in Tel Aviv to bring us up to speed on this now. Hello, Trey.
Hey, Bill, good morning. Overnight, the Israeli military intercepted a boat
Trey Yinkst.
filled with activists headed toward the Gaza Strip. The group was sailing in international waters toward Gaza under an organization called the Freedom Flotilla Coalition. A CCTV camera on board the vessel that was live streaming showed the moments before this group was detained by Israeli forces. People could be seen wearing orange life vests with their hands raised. The Israeli Foreign Ministry released a statement about the voyage saying, quote, all the passengers of the selfie yacht are safe and unharmed. They were provided with sandwiches and water.
They gave them sandwiches and water. Do they have actual sandwiches, or do they use like matzah balls? So they use like matzah there. I went over to my Jewish friend's house, and we had matzah. It's unleavened bread, but it's basically crackers. You know, here's the thing. I had multiple Jewish friends when I was in elementary school, so it wasn't just one. I had a couple, I went over their houses, and I didn't think of him as my Jew, like there was just kids, like we were just kids. Kids had more ethnicity. Like if you went over somebody's house when you were a kid, there was highly likely there was ethnic foods because, people were like first, second generation immigrants. Like, some of my friends' parents talk with an accent, right? Which, doesn't exist. Like I was third generation. I'd lost my ethnicity. My mom was Irish. My dad, was Sicilian, and my mom was Irish and German. My dad was Sicilian and Albanian. But anyways, this is kind of funny, but it's not, because the Palestinian people have been genocided, right? Like it's just Greta Thunberg and these people have to realize they just do damage wherever they go. It's great for them and their bullshit thing, but in terms of the majority of people, they don't like her. Majority of Americans. And what you're trying to do here is put pressure on Americans, the American government, because that's the one thing. If the American government turns on Israel, Israel's fucked. They're out there alone. And Trump is no way going to turn on Israel, even if he's having problems with Netanyahu, which he clearly is, right? And so you're doing this to an American audience. You'd have to figure out a way for the American audience to get it. And Israel still has over half the support of Americans. Because dumb fucks, right? This is dumb fuck stuff. This is clearly a genocide, has been for a while. But the majority of Americans is on Israeli side, and it's not even close. And so, if you're going to try to do something to stop this, you would have to do something that would win over Americans, and you're not doing that. Like, this isn't going to do it having a selfie yacht. This is just self-promotion and, trying to be a part of something when you're just going to make things worse.
Show is over. Before the group was taken into Israeli custody, activist and Swedish citizen Greta Thunberg released a pre-recorded video statement saying this.
I urge all my friends, family and comrades to put pressure on the Swedish government to release me and the others as soon as possible.
Okay, so she's so quirky. It's like she's not really all that angry. We saw her do that dance thing. I'm not going to show you those clips because I don't want to go find them. I'm pretty groggy. But it's not that hard for me to find to be there. I have a folder named meme, and I just have to search Greata, the two things, right? But she's like autistic or something, right? She has some kind of issues.
The latest effort to bring more attention to the war in Gaza comes as Israeli forces move deeper into the Palestinian enclave, launching...
I mean, just if people can't look at this and see, like this Fox News people, if they can't look at what they're seeing and go, oh, my God, look at what they've done to this place. Trump, remember, it was just bad luck. These Palestinian people, they're just under bad luck, right? And this is going to be the rule of the law where, this is going to be the new way where governments are just going to overrun citizens. as things go south and citizens start to protest because they don't have enough food, when people have real fucking protests about real things that are bothering them, and it's not staged bullshit, like things that are affecting them. No electricity, no food, no internet. We're entering the time of fuck you. This is like, hey, fuck you. You're complaining, fuck you, right? Like that's what Trump and these people are going to say. Like this is all fuck you to the Palestinian people. And what they're doing to them, they're going to do to everybody. When there's going to be, and then again, we have AI taking over, 20% possible unemployment, some of these other things, right? And so, it's like Trump and these people have all realized that people don't have any power at all. You can whine on the internet, you can post videos, but there's no fucking checks and balances anymore. You don't have any leverage. And they can just roll over your lifestyle. And they're going to do it. And you're going to be like, well, hey, what's happening? Well, you didn't stand up for the Palestinians, right? You didn't stand up for anybody else. And now you're getting, there's that guy, I forget his name. His last name is Means. And he was a Native American leader, controversial. And there was an interview done by, one of those, there's that couple that came out of InfoWars. They have more legitimate truth stuff. Geez, I can't remember anything. I'm just I'm just waking up kind of thing. But you probably know who I'm talking about. Aaron something and his wife Melissa. And they were both on InfoWars and left, and because Alex Jones had turned and went south. But he did an interview with this guy. His last name is Means. And the guy was dying of cancer. And he did an interview, and it's called Welcome to the Reservation. And he was saying, you guys are going to get the same treatment we got, the Native Americans, when they were rolled over. Because the people that run the government are worse than the people that, did basically what was like a genocide of the Native American people. Remember, there was 110 million Native Americans here. And the Native Americans on the East Coast were fucking brutal. They were badasses, right? They were the only people that turned the Vikings back. They kicked the shit out of the Vikings. The Vikings rolled through Europe, beating the shit out of everybody. The Vikings were just brutal. Bigger, stronger, and just tougher. And just totally warlike. And just, had whole invading people as part of their culture, right? Just going and ransacking weaker people. And they came to America long before Columbus and all those things. And the Vikings got their ass kicked. But they gave diseases to the Native American people on the East Coast. And they, so they were weakened. There's some kind of divinity here, even though there's the Master Chargy, the third master of the meditation system, said it wasn't, the brutality was not the world needed to be connected. Like that was, many times these things are supposed to happen. But he said the brutality was not historically necessary. Like it wasn't part of the divine plan. It's just people just fucking, having power and overusing their power, right? But there was going to be connectivity. There was going to be a global world coming. It was happening. The technology was there. But they could have connected on a symbiotic relationship with the native peoples, right? The white people could have came here without invading and killing and pushing and taking land and doing that shit, right? It didn't have to be like that. They didn't have to indoctrinate the kids and try to force Christianity on them and the other bullshit. Like, it doesn't ever have to be this way. Like, people can live in harmony. They have to be just generous and work with a, connectivity to God and serve God instead of their own egos and their own desire for whatever it is, right? And so, things are going to happen. It's just how we do it is our choice. And we did it in the worst possible way and continue to do it, right? So there's going to have to be a turn. Our system is going to be turned. It's going to be collapsed. It's an abomination. It's not godly.
additional airstrikes over the weekend. Dozens of Palestinian civilians were reportedly killed in these strikes. On Sunday, Israel released a new video from inside Gaza at the European hospital, detailing how senior Hamas leader Mohammed Sinwar was hiding under the facility. After it was bombed last month, Sinwar was killed and his body was ultimately recovered by Israeli forces to use as a negotiating chip in the ongoing ceasefire talks. Pressure continues to mount on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to end this war and bring the remaining 56 hostages home.
Remarkable. We're still.
Jesus Christ, there's only 56 hostages left. There's only 56 hostages left. And this is all over that. Why the fuck wouldn't they release them? You got your ass kicked. They're destroying your country. The only reason you wouldn't release them if you're an asset, you're an Israeli asset. You know, the Hamas holes. That's a fake, you know, false flag fucking organization, right? Jesus Christ. Okay, just a little bit of the Elon update. So I was searching for CNN for, I saw a video, I was either CNN or MSNBC, that Elon deleted his posts on Epstein. And CNN has got 15 videos about the LA riots, right? And the National Guard stuff. So they're obviously pushing that narrative. And they forgot about the Elon-Trump feud. This is from a couple days ago. Here.
He also, just a little over a half an hour ago, posted that he will apologize profusely as soon as there is a dump of the Epstein files, apologizing to Donald Trump. So not exactly backing off some of the most salacious accusations here, but I don't know, Essie, let's start with the Trump of it all. I mean, he really is trying to not turn up the volume all the way up. Why do you think that is?
First, can I just say, and I don't usually talk like this because I'm not persuaded by identity politics, but can we get some women in charge of shit? I'm sorry.
Yes,
like,
yes.
This is the cringiest, pettiest, most childish fight.
And women would make that better. And women would bring sanity to this. You know, have you seen some of the women feud over? I'm not saying that this isn't childish and petty, but you're saying women will make it better? Look, women would never get involved in something that's childish and petty. Women would never be petty.
For all of the concerns that we're too emotional, I am so embarrassed for men in this moment. I think that just needs to be said. But yeah.
Yeah, that's not anything to do with men. You know, I don't know any man that would think that what Trump and Musk are doing is a reflection on them, right? As a sex. This isn't about, you know, this isn't a condemnation of manhood. I mean, this is two narcissists. Like you're saying Trump and Elon represents all of men? Like this is so embarrassing for men? Like that's your take? I haven't seen this before. This guy, this gay dude here, right? Republican gay dude. It's just like this. You don't think like that. Like no one thinks like that. You know, when I see women and men competing outside of sports, I don't think anything about it. Oh, I want to do the Doris Burke thing. Let me go to that next after this. When I see this, you know, when men and women compete, or if there's a woman CEO or a woman doctor or a woman judge, I don't think, oh my God, it's a woman. You know, of course you have to factor in because women and men are different. I'm just doing this on the Journey series with the Sage Marg attitude towards training women. You know, women being trained in spirituality is slightly different because of, you know, women and men are designed different spiritually and these different things. But I don't have this thing about being on team men, which I'll talk about with the Doris Burke thing coming up. I wanted to talk about that anyway. But it's, you know, it's the pushing of the female agenda here, the feminist agenda that we're talking about. Like that's what the problem here. Because Elon Musk and Trump has nothing to do with, you know, this is a man thing, right? This is two petty guys who are both, you know, I mean, rich billionaires who are used to getting their way. If this isn't a distraction, which I don't think it is, I think there's some legitimacy to Elon Musk's this is how people end their relationship with Trump. And it's a very specific thing to Trump, right? When Trump and Rosie O'Donnell were going at it at Twitter, it wasn't some man versus woman thing, right? It's, it's Rosie who's an asshole, and she's, fucked, and then there's Trump who's an asshole. It's just silly.
Yeah, the Trump of it all, it's really interesting. Trump doesn't need Elon's money, per se, but Republicans do. I'm not sure why Trump is kind of being a little bit restrained. I don't think I would call him restrained yesterday. I think they all went to DEFCON 5 pretty quick. And
Okay, so we got to stop there. Look at the fucking size of this woman's fucking mouth. Look at that fucking ghoul hole. Well done. Look at that fucking thing. So I saw on CNN or MSNBC that Elon deleted his post. They were talking about how Trump had more power than Elon. And neither one of them published this. There's nothing from Fox News. There's some smaller things here. There's something from Forbes, but that's just like a music video. And no commentary about these CNN people saying why they suspected he did it, that he's worried about Trump, right? And so these are all, just to clarify, CNN and MSNBC and the rest of these major news outlets publish shit on the internet all the time. I see something on the news and I'll record it just in case they don't put it up. And I didn't record this because I'm like, well, this is big news. Because all this they could talk about was Elon and Trump's feud. And then the story kind of faded. And then Elon deletes these Epstein posts. And that's a significant development. There's, like I said, 15 posts about the riots. And there used to be, multiple posts about Elon Musk and Trump every day on these networks. And all of a sudden, a big development happens. And it's not like they just moved on from the story, which they did. But, that's significant. And they didn't post it here. So that's what I'm talking about. They didn't put it up on YouTube. And its story has faded because now the protest thing is going apeshit. It's just a huge story. And it's all they can talk about. Which I don't know how much I'm going to cover it because I make my position on protests relatively clear. But, it's interesting that they didn't talk about him deleting his post. Because that's the Epstein one specifically, because that's significant. Okay, so there's this woman named Doris Burke, who's a former college basketball star and WNBA player. And she was a sideline reporter that famously she cried because Greg Popovich was rude to her. He's a coach that now is out because he has a longtime coach of the San Antonio Spurs that had a stroke. But in other days, he made her cry, and so she became sort of relatively a sympathetic figure and sort of semi-famous. And she was by one of the Jeff Van Gundy pushed for her to get a shot as being an analyst because he felt she knew a lot about basketball. And so when ESPN fired Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson, who were just a great team, probably the best team in announcing with whatever that guy's name is. I'll think of it in a moment. But he was, it was good to listen to. They made the game better. There's Jeff Van Gundy and those guys. But now ESPN realized when they made her the lead analyst that people don't like her. And, I can appreciate them wanting to bring in more female audience into sports. So I have no problem with females being a part of all of it. The issue is for men. And again, this isn't like I'm on team men. But for the most part, men aren't trying to get into the world of Kardashians or the world of fashion or the world of Lifetime movies, things that are specifically targeted at women. And women have a lot more stuff that they get targeted on. They have a lot. Men have tools, like hardware shit, and some other these things, right? But, for the most part, men don't have as many different sort of universes as women do. Women have a lot of things, right? Things that are targeted at women as consumers. Men have, hunting and fishing and, mechanical stuff, but they don't have, I don't know. The way I see it, that when you look at commercials, I would say a good portion of them are targeted at women. Women are, have more of an array of things that they are into. And for the most part, men don't want to part. Like heterosexual men who are married to their wives don't really want, and maybe they should show more interest in the things their wives are interested in, but they don't want to invade that area. But it seems like to men that, lots of women are wanting to invade the things that men have, and sports being the premier one. Not having just a separate thing for women's sports where women are a fan of, but, getting into the man's thing and then finding out it's stupid and telling men it's stupid, because it is stupid, right? And so Doris Burke is a woman who knows a lot about basketball. She's been around. It's not like her basketball knowledge is in question. But she says things like Mr. James, like Mr. Curry. Like she's always calling the basketball players Mr. And it's kind of like watching the basketball game with your mom or your grandmother. And she's not, she doesn't add anything. She's not funny. Jeff Breen is the other guy, right? So Jeff Breen was with Mark Jackson and with Jeff Van Gundy. This dude, who I'll remember his name in a bit, is funny. Richard Jefferson's funny. Like he's at least, he's got a sense of humor. But when they had this guy Doc Rivers, who thankfully was hired by the Milwaukee Bucks as a coach, he has a really hoarse voice. It's RFK Jr. like, and he's not funny. He's kind of an asshole. And so this was a horrible team they had. And he got hired, so they hired J.J. Redick. It was, pretty good. He wasn't as good as Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson. But now ESPN has a problem because they did a DUI hire, whatever it is, DIY, whatever it is, diversity inclusion hire, DIY. And they wanted to push a woman who really isn't likable. I mean, she's likable in a non-sports fashion. Like she's not, like it's a hard thing for women to integrate into this, into all these things, right? It's hard for them to, be able to talk like men do in terms of the lingo that men have, right? And so there's some women who pull it off. There's some analysts that do a good job, that are fun to listen to, or they make the game better. But Doris Burke makes it worse. And I'm saying all this because I talked about this when this first happened, because I watched basketball and I knew it was going to go this way. And now the audience is like, we don't want her. It's the NBA Finals, and she's, she says stupid shit, and she tries to be funny and cool, but she's not pulling it off. It's like your mom trying to hang out with your boys, your friends or something, right? And trying to like act cool, and it's just like kind of pathetic. And I knew this was going to go this way, because how could it not? And so ESPN is now saying that she's probably not going to be the lead analyst next year. She's going to be demoted. And they're going to end up having to fire her. And, they're never going to have as good a team as they had. Jeff Van Gundy now coaches for the Clippers. And so that's done with. They can't bring them back. And so, they now have the NBA Today guys coming in. But, it's just mismanagement. And it's all these things that are failing. Because Kamala had won, she probably would still have her job. Like, it's just this whole shift. It's the good thing of a Trump presidency. And there's very little good in this Trump's presidency. But one of them is all this cultural bullshit is, that nobody wants, is being, what do I have here? Is this also Doris Burke here? ESPN NBA booth facing another potential shakeup with Doris Burke's spot in limbo. They have to fire her, because they've leaked it that she's not going to be there. No, she's their number one analyst, and like people dislike her. Like it's fucking bad. There's going to be all these people from TNT coming over. Reggie Miller does a good job, so they'll probably replace it with people like that. I don't know. But you know what? There's just no answers coming from everywhere you look. What people are doing is self-destructive. Like the AI is self-destructive. Trump is self-destructive. The liberal agenda is self-destructive. You know, it's making things worse. Like everything's like going in the wrong fucking direction, which of course it is, because where else could it go? You know, like people aren't going to like rise up and do a better job and want to, you know, be divinized and want to change and embrace their higher nature. Like that just sounds silly me saying it, right? Like it's what I'm supposed to be talking about, and it's silly. Like it's silly to think that people are going to do that people are going to embrace their higher nature. Like why would anybody think that's going to happen? I mean, some people will. There'll be some, and there'll be more as shit implodes. But you know, right now there needs to be motivation. We're looking for motive. You know, people are needing motivation to embrace their higher nature, and they don't have it right now. And so there's going to have to be some changes, some things, some tough love, some medicine that they are given, you know, divine medicine, and you know, then we'll see. Anyways, so I used to really like the show Nature on PBS. I haven't watched it in some time. My wife and I both are interested in animal life. And one of my viewers sent me this it was an Instagram clip. I got the whole trailer here.
There really is this extraterrestrial quality to sperm whales. They're as close as we have to aliens on our own planet. What are they thinking? I was out at sea trying to find some sperm whales, got my camera, slowly swam over, and then there was one whale that sort of came a bit closer. My instinct always is to not physically touch any marine life, but she wasn't having any of that. She hadn't been named yet, so I called her Dolores. She quickly became the whale that I wanted to see and the whale that I looked for the most. She was incredibly physical. I rolled in the water, and then I watched and she rolled in the water. It almost felt like genuine excitement. She was so interested and so curious. It was just a level of intimacy that I've never had with any kind of whale before.
Okay, so there's a little bit more to it. Like he, you know, in the clip that I saw, he tapped his camera because when sperm whales greet each other, they click. They make this clicking sound. And then she started doing the same thing, mimicking what he was, you know, she started doing it. And then they, you know, had this relationship. It's called Patrick and the Whale. There was something else, I think I showed it here, where this diver, I think it was a woman, connected with a tiger shark, which are, you know, that can be, you know, once in a while they bite people. And a big female tiger shark. Maybe it was a dude, can't remember who it was. But the person made a relationship with this tiger shark, and they'd show up every year, the shark would, at the same spot where this person would scuba dive, and they would connect. And there was you know, so there's a lot more going on. You know, a lot of these animals are a lot smarter. They're not necessarily, certainly sea animals aren't domestic. You can't domesticate them like they do with you know, but they're not going to be pets, but they, you know, there's relationships that are formed, right? And, you know, you think about all the shit we're doing. That's the pollution and just all of it. And, you know, these animals have their own level of consciousness. And they have their own potential relationship with divinity. They all come from God, right? Everything's created through divine energy, divine love. And, you know, there's a lot of bad shit going on with people that is affecting other creatures, innocent creatures, and, you know, all these things. Anyways, let's move on to the next thing. I didn't plan this. This has happened organically. This is something else somebody sent me.
My son has identified as a cat for the past 7 years, and now all of a sudden he's telling me he doesn't think he's a cat anymore. He thinks he wants to be human. He's identified as a cat since he was 7 years old, and now he's 14, almost 15, and all of a sudden he says he wants to be human. I have trained this guy to use the litter box. I have made sure I've made food for him that is safe for both cats and humans to eat.
Okay. Brainiac. Now, I'm not agreeing with anything she's done with her kid and, you know, all of it, but if you're going to look at your kid as being a cat, it still has a human body. You can't feed it cat food.
I have gone to lawyers to try to get him to where he can go visit a veterinarian instead of a pediatrician. And
Why would you do that? Because he still has a human body. I mean, just...
now all of a sudden, he's no longer trans species. After I've advocated for all these rights and, you know, I got the litter box in the schools and everything, I'm a little upset. Like, I love him still, of course, but like...
I love him still. I still love him. I still love my child. I mean, just because he doesn't want to be a fucking cat anymore. I hope this is a joke, but I don't think it is.
I'm a little upset because I'm just like, has society influenced you into thinking you're a human again?
I hope this is satire.
Why don't you want to identify as a cat anymore? That's my baby, you know? Have any other trans species parents experienced this? My son has...
Oh, yeah, they're all going to experience it because it's fucking batshit crazy. There's no thing as trans species. You know, you can have a connection to certain animals, which is a positive thing. It could be past life thing, whatever. But you're a fucking human, right? And if a kid says that they're a cat and they're 2 or 3 years old and you lean into that, eventually they're going to be like, you know, teenagers and shit, right? You know, and it's probably when going to high school, and, you know, he's got to live with that shit, right? This social media, this mom. I mean, you know, all of it. Like, just, that kid's so fucked. So that's satire, that cat. Well, I recognize her for something else. But, you know, it's believable because there are people who do that with their kids. So this is a praying mantis, and I'll get the name of this after we're done because I forgot to read it beforehand. But it takes its arms and it spreads its wings and it makes it look like it has a big ass mouth. These are its, so you can see what happens here. It's going to take its spikes and turn it into like what looks like a mouth. I mean, like how cool is that, right? Like it's learned to do that. It, you know, it doesn't have a mirror, but it's figured out that it can make itself look like something else to a predator or something that it's like, I don't want to fuck with that thing. Look at its teeth. You know? Okay, so this is Moses. This is AI generated. That's called a Malaysian deadleaf mantis. And so let me just show you this here.
All right, guys, me and Aaron just got inside the palace. We're about to ask Pharaoh to let our people go. No idea how this is going to go, but wish us luck. Okay, we just left the meeting. We asked, he laughed, said no one's going anywhere. Anyway, the fight goes on.
Pharaoh, if you're watching this, this is your last chance. Let the people go, or it's going to rain, hail, frogs, whatever.
Hashtag let my people go.
You know, this is clever and probably didn't take much effort to generate with AI. You know, I mean, I could make video clips like this. I don't know if they would be as good because I don't have the, you know. But that's what the future is going to be. People are sharing these things. I got another one I'm going to show you. And if I scroll through Facebook, so much of the content now is AI generated. And it's just going to, and they're pushing this, right? They're weighing it towards this because, you know, AI created content just like everything else. I mean, what I talked about with Hollywood is more controllable and it's cheaper. I mean, it's really almost free for, you have to pay actors and all this. Like there's lots of job loss right here. You can see it. There's lots of jobs that no longer are necessary when some individual person can spend 15 minutes with AI and create something like this.
He let us go, then changed his mind. Now he's sending soldiers. We're literally running to the sea right now. We just got here, sea in front, army behind, no way out. Everyone's freaking out. Let's see what God tells us to do. Guys, the sea literally opened up. I'll explain later. We're walking through now. And no, this path isn't on Google Maps.
Didn't film the parting, was busy holding the staff. But yeah, it worked. The sea split.
All of a sudden, it has this Australian accent. I mean, he doesn't look like a real Jewish guy from Israel, but and now he's dropped into an Australian accent.
Staff. But yeah, it worked. The sea split. I'm exhausted.
All right, guys, we made it. Seal's behind us, Pharaoh's not. Don't forget to like, comment, and maybe bring sandals next time. We walked a lot.
June, Pride Month.
It's also Men's Mental Health
Yeah,
Month.
but no better time than now to let your junk hang out at the parade.
Jackie joins us live at the Pride Fest.
We're here live at Identity Fest, where sausage parties meet Scissor Central.
Today, I'm a pan-dimensional soul fox identifying as a pansexual.
Stunning and brave. Back to you, Erica.
You know, these things are funny and clever, but they, you know, they're not thoughtful or they're not deep dives. They're just, you know, it's, you can make these meme movies, basically. And memes are great. Like, I love memes. But it's not substantial. And, you know, like I said, we're dying here, all of us at YouTube. Like, I showed you, I talked about a video somebody sent me. And it was a normie who was, you know, she was into the New York Times, New York Post, New York Times. You know, she ended her video with, I'm going to renew my subscription to my New York Times. She was a mainstream person. And she had a fairly popular channel, a much more, viewed channel than my channel. And she was talking about how everybody in YouTube is, you know, they're running too many ads, so they're losing viewers from that. YouTube's not paying people for their ads, and they're recommending AI content, and all these organic human creators are suffering. And it's a thing, right? It's a plague, and this is why, and it's going to be, you know, there's a place for all this stuff, but it's not, you know, doesn't substitute for, you know, deep dive analysis by a human being, which is far superior to anything an AI will do. AIs are programmed to be mainstream and give more preference and weight to authoritarian news.
What a powerful way to honor Men's Mental Health Month by not mentioning men at all.
That's right, Erica. In other news, parents who don't give their kids puberty blockers are going to jail. We go live to Tammy, reporting from the front lines of mental illness.
We're here with a parent who listened to the Jewish community. What inspired this journey? He said he wants to be a girl. That's so courageous.
Wow. That's not gross at all.
No, it's really not. And now for the weather.
Artificial clouds forming over the Pacific, heavy aluminum particulates incoming with scattered bursts of direct energy interference. Could be another Lahaina. Stay alert.
Wow, climate change is wild today. Good thing Newscomb emptied the water reservoirs. Wouldn't want people putting these fires out.
So this is the future, right? And, you know, how many videos are you going to see like this before you're looking for, like, real human shit? You know, so, whatever, it's going to run its course. Okay, I got one more thing. A Donny O'Sullivan report on UFO conference, which is, I want to end with that, do a little voiceover to do with that. Then someone sent me this. There is a Saharan dust impact. Which map shows which states could be impacted by Saharan dust? You know, there's this, how to check the air quality near you before Saharan dust sweeps the UK. So there's dust from the Sahara Desert. And, you know, people were calling bullshit on this. Somebody sent me something. I didn't like it. But, you know, when there was a dust storm in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl, the dust went 300 feet over New York City into the Atlantic Ocean. These dust storms, I mean, this, you know, the air quality, air circulates around the globe. And I've been in places where there's been wildfires. Like I was in, I think, New Mexico, and there's wildfires in Houston. And the smoke was just coming in, like all these things, right? You breathe other people's air. Like it's very clear they know about this now. So they can put particulates in the air one place and you're going to get it. Like the air circulates. The massive dust storm equivalent to the size of 48 U.S. states. And so, you know, more biblical-like shit going on. So this was something I copied off the TV, and it wasn't something that they put up on the internet. It's a Donny O'Sullivan report. It might be somewhere where he does it, where he's shitting all over UFO people. Let me just check one thing here before we get into it. But let me tell this story. I think I didn't say this already. If I did, well, I'm just a little bit groggy today. I don't know why. I slept really well last night. That's probably why. I had this Fox News report, and it was about them giving vitamin B9, like clinical dosages to autistic people, and it seems to help them. And I didn't know why I saved it on TV, and as I'm deleting it, I literally, like, I hit the delete button, and I'm watching it, and they're talking about how that pharmaceutical companies don't want to dive into this. It's something used for cancer patients as well. But they don't want to dive into the research and development because there's no money in vitamin B9. And so, it said everything you need to know about pharmaceutical companies. Because if there's something that's actually working, they had a doctor on that said it works with their patients, then they should dive into it, even if they can't make money on it, because they're about healing people, right? People that they've created, basically, like a condition they've created. Anyways, let me check to see if I can find this on Twitter. I didn't look there, but then we'll come back to this if I can't find it there.
We're on the cusp of a major disclosure event.
The disclosure event.
The disclosure event.
Right.
Brought about by...
The disclosure president is going to be Donald Trump. And the reason for that is he is the president who got the last chair when the music stopped. The first head of state that confirms that we're not alone gets one of the greatest political legacies of all time. Do you think he's the kind of president who might enjoy having a credible legacy like that? I kind of think so.
Trump didn't make this massive announcement in his first term.
Donny is a piece of shit from Ireland. I used to put a leprechaun head on him in some of my videos. And there were Irish viewers that said, like, people in Ireland think he's a wanker. Their words, not mine. And he is a wanker. And, these guys who come to America and they have an accent, so people like whatever. But he was, you think there's something going on there, but usually they're rejects from their own country. But he does this anti-truth, anti-alternative media stuff. He was always with Brian Stelsa on unreliable sources. And, that show that now came back and is tanking again. But its main job is to make truthers and people who have alternative beliefs look stupid. And he sucks at it. Like, he's not good at it. But he's gotten better at not being so obnoxious and pretending to these people like he's interested. If he's from CNN, he's making fun of you. You should just know that. Like, if the mainstream media is there, they're going to get sound bites or Daily Show or something. They're going to use it to screw you over. They're not going to give you fair coverage.
Well, what gives you confidence that he'll do it this time around?
Second time around, right? This time not with a lot of carryovers that are in there to kind of keep them, guardrails and crap. Now this is maybe the most important thing I can tell you right now. Anna Luna, she says, the UAP issue is the most bipartisan investigation in the history of the United States.
We'll be conducting investigations into the following.
As part of Trump's promises for greater transparency from JFK to Epstein to UFOs, he created a task force chaired by Representative Luna on the declassification of federal secrets. It's a promise Jeremy Corbell has dedicated his life to helping fulfill. You are responsible for bringing people to Congress to testify on this, something now that people are taking seriously.
You're going to blame me for that?
That's funny. I have something to say about this. I want to show. It's not. We haven't got to the point. That's the reason I'm showing you this. But anytime you're looking for validation or confirmation from the mainstream, you're fucked. Your whole premise is fucked, right? the mainstream, it covers up shit and lies about shit. And then, you want the government to finally release the official story. Like, that was stuff like Kennedy campaigned on and Trump campaigned on. And then Trump's released all this shit, and none of it confirms any of the beliefs of the so-called conspiracy theorists. The Kennedy thing had some more stuff in it that was pretty damning. But, it's subtle stuff. There's no bombshell stuff. There's no bombshell Epstein stuff. There's no bombshell UFO stuff. There's just, there's more evidence. And even if there was, they're not going to cover it anyway. So why are you going to the mainstream? Like, why do people think that, it's a plague on the truth community that somebody who's a politician, someone like Trump, or someone who's a unsuccessful actor, or someone whose career is fading, like Roseanne Barr, or that guy Isaac Cappy, and they come into the truth community, and you feel like you're validated because someone from Hollywood or some piece of shit like Trump finally flirts with you a little bit. If you're secure in your beliefs, you don't need validation, and you certainly don't need it from these fucking people that are proven liars. And when the proven liars are on your side, it's a bad thing. If they've been covering up something for years and all of a sudden they start talking about the truth of it, then that's a bad sign. Like, that's shitty. Like, you don't want that at all, right? And so, like, don't go on CNN. Don't go to Congress. They're not going to, they're not searching for the fucking truth. It's silly. It's just, like, really silly. Like, it makes everything that you're working for and everything that you believe a joke, because you think that you're going to get some truth from the perpetual lying, the habitual lying institutions.
Yeah, it was ingrained in our kind of society that this is not something to be taken seriously. I'd say the interest is now surging a little bit because people that are serious can come forward and seriously talk about it.
I'd say some of the most optimistic people we've spoken to here this week have said they think Trump is going to come out, an Oval Office address, and say, here it is.
So I don't feel the same way. I haven't seen evidence that the new administration, new-ish administration, is actually going to make good on that promise.
For many here, whether Trump's government discloses what it really knows is of lesser importance. The truth is coming anyway.
So the public's awareness on all fronts is just growing, that the internet sealed its fate. That's the world we live in. You want to put out some piece of disinformation by the government? Fine. The internet will shred it in a day.
If you told someone this 20 years ago, how do you think they would have reacted?
They say you're crazy.
Thank you. That's why.
So what's changed?
This.
So that's the point I want to come back to. I'm going to do that in a voiceover. But let's watch how this thing wraps up here. Then Aaron Burnett's smirk.
Community?
Community.
Yep. Our community. This community. That's what changed.
Yeah.
People waking up and going, we need to talk about this. Oh, yes, we do. We need to talk about it a lot. Because it's coming whether we are ready or not. So.
Joni O'Sullivan, CNN, Planet Earth.
Thanks to Joni for that amazing report, and thanks to all of you for being with us on a Friday. Anderson starts now.
So I don't have the whole report, but I only care about one part of this here. But you can see her fucking smirk. Look at her fucking smirk at the end of this thing. And so the issue is not that people are starting to believe in it, that the official story became there are no extraterrestrial life. We're the only fucking intelligent life in the universe. Like, that is the official fucking story. It's more than that. The official story is that there is no other life forms on any other planet. This is the only fucking planet that happened. It's so fucking narcissistic. And the intelligent part is the more important piece, right? And so what this is really about, for all of the rest of the time, even Aboriginal people knew, very primitive people knew that there was these things called sky people or space people. There's cave art, I'll put my compilation here. That's just some of it. There's artifacts of spaceships, there's spaceships and old paintings. And so people saw these things. And long before people had the ability to fly, aircraft, human beings. Well, there were actually human beings here, civilizations that were based in, alien technology, alien people were here. They left, they created what is now the slave-based human population that lives very short lives. These are people who live thousands of years, right? And so it's a known fact, and the people, the Freemasons have information about this, all these, there's hidden information, hidden archaeology. They don't want you to know that there is more intelligent people, more advanced people. So why don't they want you to know? Well, they left behind a bunch of people to run the world. They took off or whatever. I don't know what kind of organization there was. And there's people with knowledge, and everyone knew it. They were here, and then they weren't. They had a presence here. Now you see there's alien ships show up or whatever it is, but there used to be alien presence here, or higher developed beings that were humanoid and other whatever it might have been. And so why would they make it so we're the only planet with life on it? Well, because then the government becomes the all-encompassing authority. The government is the most powerful entity, and our military is the most powerful military. People are the governmental entities is the authority, and also religions. It really comes from religions, because if religions let you know that there were people and beings that were far beyond you, and that's also etheric beings, which is another form of life, which people believe in a soul, so they believe in etheric life. And so there's etheric life on all these planets. There's etheric life on the moon. There's etheric life on planet Earth. And they're more evolved. They've gone, past the need for a body. They've evolved past this stage in your existence where you're in physical form. And they incarnate in physical form once in a while as a higher developed soul that comes down to show people that we have a lot more potential. And this is, the whole Sajmarg method of meditation is filled with, souls that come from a, higher level of consciousness. And it's, a part of this movement. There's been all these movements, religious, spiritual movements that have come down with higher souls, souls that have evolved here, or souls that are from another part of the, the created universe, the etheric universe. And they incarnate in here to bring people up. And people just reject it out of hand. And so religions don't want to know that there's a higher authority. And governments don't want you to know that there's people can kick the shit out of us with their technology and their weaponry. And that, the government can be completely overrun. And they've held the governments and these people of power have held the earth hostage with this, nuclear power and things. Maybe they've gotten through contact with demonic entities or whatever reasons that people have these weapons now. They're holding the earth hostage. And this is pretty, evidence, pretty clear. Because they're saying, if you guys show up, we're going to fucking destroy this place. Right? We're going to say you guys are trying to take over the earth, and we're going to turn it into a shit show. But there's going to be there's going to be an invasion at some point. Because there has to be. To stop the bullshit, right? Stop, it's a planet that, it isn't our planet. It isn't human beings' planet. There's no fucking... God didn't give you dominion over shit, right? Like this whole, manifest destiny bullshit. And so this idea that it's silly to believe in aliens, right? They've made it so. But, all of human history is filled with people who understood there were sky people. Even, primitive people that didn't understand what it was. That there was higher developed souls here. Higher developed beings here, right? That are, more intelligent, more advanced. And... just the myopic nature of that idea that it's silly to believe in extraterrestrial life. It's silly. That's how much they've indoctrinated everybody, even though they love to put alien life in all kinds of movies and TV shows and things. But the official story is, oh, that's silly. You're crazy to believe that there's aliens. You're fucking narcissistic and pathetic to believe that there's not. That we would be the only fucking life in all of the universe. This vast universe. For you firmament believing motherfuckers, there's no help for you. But for the rest of us who understand that there's a vast universe and there's all these stars that are much bigger than ours that produce heat and light and these things that can produce life forms, and that there's souls and etheric life It's a fucking stupid. There should be no question about it. The fact that you would laugh at people and gaslight them because the powers that be don't want you to know that there's something better than them, right? There's something more evolved. They don't want to let you know where they're getting all these fucking inventions and shit. Oh, there's reverse engineered things that they have, right? They don't want to let you know. Of course they're not going to let you know. So why would you go to them, expect them to come out and say, hey, we've been fucking lying to you for years. That's the only thing they can say. We've been bullshitting you about the idea of alien life. That's everything. Like if they're lying to you about that, then there's no confidence. People would lose confidence in the government. Oh, people like, I didn't know. I didn't know. Right? But of course they know. Everyone fucking knows. And so it's silly to think there isn't. And it's like, myopic. Even if we didn't have contact, which we did. Let's say there was no contact, which, we're created by fucking aliens. Like we're born in test tubes. Like there's all this evidence, the spliced chromosomes, and there's a Whispers of the Brighter World message about it. We come from test tubes. That's why we live such short lives. We should live over 1,000 years. Why do tortoises outlive us? Why would tortoises outlive people? Right? Like you can understand some animals living short lives, but why people? Like it's you have a rush. Your life flies by you. It's rushing by you. People used to live hundreds, if not thousands, of years for various reasons, right? Because it takes that long to spiritually evolve. Just when, like, I've just figured things out, like I've just cracked the code of my life, and I'm 60. I'm done. Like my body's going south. I mean, like it happens, and there's longevity in my family, but if I make it to 90, like my parents and grandparents, which I probably will, I don't know. We'll see. Whatever it is, I'll probably make it to my 80s if I don't die an unnatural death. But either way, it's I'm just figuring things out, and now I got to prepare for my death, right? So, that's the reality of our short lives here. Too much is packed in a short period of time. There's a reason for that. In that Blade Runner movie, they made clones for only 4 years. The clones were superior physically; they were stronger, and yet they couldn't live for more than 4 years because if they lived longer, they would take over humanity. They had better fucking skill set, right? But as slaves, they had to have a temporary life. The shorter the life, the better. So it keeps them from evolving. It keeps them from finding out the divinity within them and the evolutionary hidden junk DNA that they have, which I've talked about extensively. Anyways, let's wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely pointing for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.